My question for you would be, do you think that minors should have access to sex change hormones or testosterone, people under the age of 18?
Right. So definitely not surgeries.
Okay, but puberty blockers and
but things that are more reversible. And I really would say that I understand the sensitivity of this issue, which is why I want the best medical consensus to prevail, which is to say that if you demonstrate, it's not, I have to be honest, it's not studied enough. We need more research on this, but I've seen some data that suggests pretty compellingly that if you were to not do any like puberty blockers or anything with someone has gender dysphoria, by the time they're fully through puberty and they're 18 years old, now the mental implications of that for the rest of life, especially someone who's male, are much more damaging. But I'm also not the medical professional, so I don't know.
Do you think that gender identity should be a protected class under the 1964 Civil Rights Act? I'll rephrase it. Do you think that businesses should have the right to discriminate on the basis of gender identity?
No.
So, like, if there's someone who's clearly biologically male and they want to use a women's bathroom or a women's locker room, not even like a changing room, but like a women's only area, you think that they should be allowed to do it?
That's tough. Because someone who's like, I mean, we could cite examples, very transitioned, like Nancy Mace's obsession with the one trans congresswoman, that makes no sense. And what I've seen, and this has been researched, is that you actually don't see an increase in assault or harassment if people are going to the bathroom that aligns with their gender identity. But if you force someone who, especially if they very much appear to be the like one gender identity, but then they are forced to go into the one that aligns with what they were assigned at birth, that actually does increase harassment and assault.
Right.
So it seems the most logical thing is let's do what we were doing before, which is no one really.
Well,
don't ask, don't tell.
No, you just went to the one that made sense.
Well, actually,
like if you just start identifying some type of way, and in every way to an observer you look like a really matured man, then probably you go on the.
I largely agree, but it is difficult. So it's like hard to have a specific stance. Like the individuals we often use for this, forgive me for saying your names, but they're like the two examples is Buck Angel and Blair White. Are you familiar with these individuals?
Blair White, I am.
Yeah, Blair's walking around, everyone's like, that's a young woman. They don't realize that Blair is a trans woman. And Buck Angel walks around like, that is a burly man. Nobody realized that Buck is actually a trans man. If Buck Angel walked in the women's room, you're gonna have problems. I'm sorry, that's just true. Buck Angel is like a gruff, bearded male, looking like a male. And if Blair went to the men's room, guys largely wouldn't care as much, other than to be like, this is weird, because guys don't feel as threatened. And that's where the challenge comes in that I do agree with. But the issue largely, which came up in the Supreme Court arguments, was that the criteria for civil rights protection is immutability. Mm-hmm. And the argument from the trans side is that gender is mutable. Ergo, it cannot be protected under the law. And the Supreme Court was wrong in their ruling. What was it, 2019? They ruled that gender identity is protected under the sex category. But gender identity is not immutable. You can change your gender identity. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it can't be protected under the civil rights law. Yeah. So I don't know how you handle it. But ultimately then, it doesn't matter how many trans women are in the NCAA or whatever it may be. It's just simply, we don't care because you are not a protected class.
Yeah, I mean, this has been one that I get upset with the weaponization of it, I'd say. Like it being attached in the ways that it was to Harris when her campaign was something different. But I'm also willing to engage with it.
Well, I guess, where do you think the Harris campaign fell when it came to trans issues? Because I feel like there's a little bit of gaslighting. Because I do, for all intents and purposes, believe that Harris and the Democrats writ large do believe that people can change genders and writ large support. Oh, okay, so.
But we just made the distinction as to why I believe that.
Okay, so Kamala Harris and her campaign did support that stuff.
But like we all,
so we're not like
you mean identity. You mean identity.
Yeah,
right?
like gender, but that's like synonymous with gender.
I don't think it's misleading,
but to liberals, not to conservatives.
Sex spirit,
right?
And so we're just trying to we're trying to understand each other. I'm not saying you were wrong to use the words.
What were we saying wrong about the Kamala Harris campaign then, or like?
Oh, just that like she never made that a topic of her campaign. That wasn't on her policy agenda. No, she's not seeking to.
It's fair to say that she never made it a topic of her campaign, but it's not fair to say that it's not something that was made very public by Democrats consistent.
Kamala in the past had been in favor of it.
Yeah.
She didn't use it in her
favor of
campaign
what?
of gender surgeries, notably when she said we want to give illegal immigrants and detainment transgender surgeries.
Yeah.
She publicly said it.
That clip.
I think you're totally right that her campaign did not say these things.
Yeah.
That's why it's important we have free speech in this country, so we were able to inform people, hey, she's dodging this issue. She's very much in favor of these things. She just won't say it because she knows it's a losing issue.
No, but like even if you look at what Biden and Harris, I guess, the administration has done on the issue, it's not like they're to the far left of the issue. There have been things they've done that have kind of walked the line we're talking about that pissed off both sides.
I think Jazz Jennings' mother should be in federal prison.
See if Ron DeSantis. Are they still in Florida?
Yeah, they never did anything about that.
Man.
Let me see if I could pull this up.
Yeah. I take issue with the idea that there's a separation between gender and biological sex. I used to think
like
that,
Blair White.
Hey, hang on, let me finish here. I used to be fine with the idea of gender and stuff, but the more you actually think about it, it really does boil down to like sex spirit, because it's something that no one can really define what a gender is. How you express yourself. Is it just the clothes that you wear? It's the way that you carry yourself.
With her, I'm worried about like her mental well-being and her dilation. The minute she leaves my house, we have a dilation problem.
That is a concern. When you don't have that watchful eye, they tend to go back to old patterns.
I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep.
This is so gross.
Taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will. But Jazz is bad.
I want to go back.
Lubrication on it.
Sounds like
and taken the dilator, Jazz out of a dead sleep, and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will. But Jazz is bad.
She should be in prison. Jazz Jennings, do you know who that is? One of the first trans kids was identified in the press as like at 7 years old as being like a trans child. Was given puberty blockers and then multiple surgeries to graft what they call a neovagina. I believe they use stomach lining to do it. There are multiple complications resulting in severe depression and morbid obesity. And this is from the TLC. I believe it's TLC. I don't know. It's from the reality TV show where Jazz Jennings' mother says that if Jazz doesn't want to do this, she will wake her up in the dead of night and tell her to do it or she will. This woman should be in prison. If a man was caught on camera saying, I wake my wife at the middle of the night and I say, you stick this in you right now, and if you don't, I will, that guy would go to jail.
Yep.
But for some reason, this is considered normal and acceptable. And this is like an old show. It's been in the air for a long time. We are looking at, with Jazz Jennings and as well as many other people, systemic child abuse to an extreme degree that has largely been defended by the Democratic Party. They don't acknowledge this. I'm not surprised you don't know what this is. This doesn't circulate in liberal circles. I guess they don't watch the show or whatever. But then you have like another really great example, of course, is the book Genderqueer. When the left was claiming the right was calling for banning books, it's like, well, yeah, the ones that have porn in them.
Yeah, but that was like, there were so many, because we've looked at those lists. I think you would agree. What gets grabbed up in those banning sprees are not just porn books.
Somebody wants to ban a book that's like...
No, but it's like random. There were like random ones.
Right.
Start pressing me.
Somebody wants to ban some random book that has nothing to do with like weird adult materials.
Yeah,
like then we're in agreement. Like that's stupid. But when like Emma Vigeland of Majority Report outright stated she wanted children to have access to descriptive scat materials, I'm like, okay, you must be a pedophile. And then she was like, how dare you call me that? And then they were like, could you believe Tim Pool called it? I'm like, a grown woman said she wanted to give little kids books on what scat means. What am I supposed to call her? I don't know. She publicly stated it. What do you do? Do you think, do you ever hear of the book, This Book is Gay? So a teacher gave it to her middle school students. The parents called the police on her for it because the book was describing how to use Grindr for 12-year-olds. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Why would Emma Vigeland in Majority Report be like, that's a good thing for kids to have? They're a big YouTube show, right? And so this is the problem we have. Someone comes to me and says like, hey, here's a book about like an auto mechanic who, is engaging in questionable behaviors. It's probably like a teenage novel. I'd be like, I don't know if that should be banned. Maybe we should look through it. Doesn't seem too adult. What's the rating on it? Then you look at Genderqueer, which is rating is actually 18 plus, and they're giving it to 10-year-olds. And it's like, yeah, okay, well, we shouldn't do that. And then they say, we're trying to ban books. So it's stuff like that. We don't need to rehash it. But this video, I hope everybody sees. And I hope everybody hears what she said.
And put the lubrication on
Here you
it.
go.
To old patterns.
I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will. But Jazz is back.
That's sickening.
She lives in Florida, and they've never done anything about this.
Yeah, that's absolutely just insane, and that's child abuse. But Luke, the opposite of that is happening. These people aren't being held accountable. Parents in Canada, parents in Europe are literally being sent to jail because they don't want to go along with the mutilation of their children. What do you think about those specific laws and this overreach of government that goes into people's personal lives and says, you know what, your child is going to not be able to have children forever because they just were influenced by either what they saw or the school or their peers that was kind of propagandized to them that essentially eugenicizes them?
So I can't speak to what Canada's doing, but in the United States, I know I've seen multiple examples of laws supposedly that were getting passed that would do stuff like that, and then when I looked into them, that's not what they were doing. But I just think this is something, as we hopefully all agree, that number one, if you're underage, there needs to be some reversibility to it. Oh God, I think we're all in
She was
agreement
underage.
about that. Yeah,
She was underage the whole
But
time.
there isn't.
I'm with you.
You can't
There's
reverse it. You can't reverse
puberty
hormone.
blockers are not reversible. That's not true.
well, that's not the.
So let's just start it like this.
With the
let's just-
overwhelming research on this, but
Let's just 7 to 10 years old. Wait, hold on. Let's just say 7 to 10 years old. What happens to a child?
what happens to a child?
Right. So
Like if they're having gender problems.
basically, what the reason why they're saying puberty blockers are reversible is that you can stop taking them, but at a certain point, if you're on puberty blockers, your body is still growing. It's just not developing secondary sex characteristics and other things associated with the hormones, like your joints, your eyes, et cetera, your bone density. So they say it's reversible because you can stop taking it and you live. It's not reversible in the sense that you will never get back the years 10 through 12 to be able to develop bone density as you're growing. So that's not reversible.
Yeah, I would just pull up the research. My point is that I don't think I'm the best expert on this. And so that's why, and I don't think y'all are either. And I don't think that the government probably will be best to make calls on which things are appropriate when, other than given our current laws around adulthood, I think permanent surgeries would be off the table. But then with the other stuff,
What about for adults?
As it's studied, I want to see, because I know that on the other end of the spectrum, like this is one end of the spectrum, right? We'd all agree it's wrong. On the other end is people who live much worse quality of lives, and then it's improved greatly, their suicidal ideation, etc.
I got to stop you right there. It was actually
By
the trans man who
that
argued at the Supreme Court said that's not true.
Again, I'm just talking about the
Right.
research.
No.
that
The
has been-
ACLU's transgender lawyer arguing on behalf of trans kids said there is no evidence to suggest suicidal ideation decreases with transgender treatment.
I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. I'm saying depending on the medical consensus after thorough research should drive our approach to this, just like any other issue. And the obsession on this one with it being taken out of the hands of doctors and families, as opposed to any other treatment kids get, confuses me. But I'm not the expert, so don't pick my brain. I don't know.
No, let's give it to an actual transgender individual who argued at the Supreme Court from City Journal. An astonishing moment took place yesterday at the Supreme Court. This is from 2 weeks ago during oral arguments in U.S. v. Scrimeti, the case that challenges Tennessee's ban on pediatric sex change procedures. Chase Strangio, the American Civil Liberties Union attorney, admitted to Justice Samuel Alito that the narrative around the risk of suicide in trans-identified youth is false. Before Alito and Strangio's exchange, Justice Sonia Sotomayor had asked U.S. Solicitor General Elizabeth Proligar about minors with gender dysphoria who attempt suicide. Proligar responded that the rates of suicide, not attempts, but actual death by suicide in that population are striking. Given the government's support for puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones as treatments for gender dysphoric youth, the clear implication of Proligar's remarks was that such interventions are known to prevent these tragic and interview common events. So this claim, the rates of suicide among gender dysphoric young people are high, constitutes a trans suicide myth. When it was Strangio's turn, Justice Alito asked, do you maintain that the procedures and medications in question reduce the risk of suicide? The transgender identifying attorney responded, I do, Justice Alito, maintain that the medications in question reduce the risk of depression, anxiety, and suicidality, which are all indicators of potential suicide. Note that Alito asked about suicide and Strangio answered about suicidality, the latter of which refers to the thoughts or intent of attempted suicide. Though suicide would be preceded by suicidality, research does not show that suicidality is a reliable predictor of suicide. According to the CDC, in 2022, for every one person who committed suicide, 270 people seriously thought about suicide and 33 attempted it. Strangio's pivot to suicidality is a standard tactic, et cetera, et cetera. Then came Mr. Strangio's remarkable concession. What I think that is referring to here is there is no evidence in these studies that the treatment reduces completed suicide. And the reason for that is completed suicide, thankfully, admittedly, is rare. And we're talking about a very small population of individuals with studies that don't necessarily have completed suicides within them. However, there are multiple studies and long-term longitudinal studies that do show that there is a reduction in suicidality. Yeah. This was actually a very big
That's what I said. Did you hear me? I said suicidality.
But suicidality is not suicide.
I understand that.
Right.
I'm saying this is a mental phenomenon. So then it's going to be treated, and then you're going to check back like we do with any other.
So
it relates to the psychology of someone on how psychologically they're being impacted.
I'm not going to put this on you, but generally speaking, this is what we would call a Mott and Bailey argument, where the left has repeatedly said you can either have a transgender daughter or a dead son, implying that they will commit suicide. As we know, that's not true. Suicidality is depression and thoughts of suicide, not actual attempts.
Well, because he's in front of the Supreme Court, this person is being very specific about what the research has shown, and the sample group is so tiny that, yeah, you're not going to see in how long it's been studied, probably actual suicidal outcomes. But that doesn't take away from, if you reduce suicidality, you presume that people are less likely to commit suicide.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.